Hi guys, Lisa from Mixed Media here, and today I have with me Brian Ross from Satan and Blitzkrieg. Now Brian has just got back from London on tour with Satan, and in the next couple of days he's going to be going out with Blitzkrieg on tour. Now Brian, I've heard that the tour of Blitzkrieg in Europe is something like 9 gigs in 12 days. Now that has got to be exhausting.
It is, but it's kind of, you do it. And at the time while you're doing it, it doesn't seem quite so bad. It's when you get to the end of it and the adrenaline's gone, and you're kind of travelling home. That's when it hits you, and you think, what the hell's going on here? It's like, you know, and all of the stuff that you do on tour as well. It's, you know, when you've got a spare moment, it's a nightmare. Yeah. Because the guys are trying to find things to amuse themselves, which inevitably means that somebody's going to get something poured over their head or whatever. Get
pranked.
Yeah, absolutely, and it kind of wears you down because you don't go to sleep while you're in the tour bus, and you know.
I can imagine.
You just don't go to sleep because you know somebody's going to do something. Generally, they don't do it to me though, because if they do, I'd fire them.
Good answer. So now, back in the day, when you were recording with Satan and Blitzkrieg, you went into a studio and that was pretty much the only way you would get recordings done. Now, nowadays we can use software like Pro Tools, Logic and GarageBand. So what was the process back then to record an album in the studio?
It was a lot different back then. You had to go into a studio. That was the only way to do it. And they used to use like 2-inch master reel-to-reel tape, which was a nightmare. There was no click track or anything like that to keep you in time. You just literally had to go in and hope that your drummer didn't speed up or slow down, because you did everything to that. You know? And it was a long process. Everything had to be recorded separately. Yeah, you still do that, but with a click track it makes it so much easier. Yeah.
It's much easier to correct mistakes now as well.
Yes, it is. I mean, you know, back then you had to get the drums in one. Any mistake, it had to be redone. Now, you can actually focus in on a minute, even the minutest second of a drum pattern, and take that note, you know, that out, that beat or whatever, and correct it. Back then, you couldn't do that. It all had to be done. And then when you're doing your overdubs and stuff like that, it's kind of the same, but the main difference really is that back then it was probably more fun. Yeah. Because you had to be in the studio together. It was morale building, and you know, everybody was together and sort of experiencing it all together. Now you could kind of go, you know, do it in, obviously noise permitting, and you could do it in your home, a bit more difficult with a drum kit, of course, but but we could actually physically come down to the rehearsal facility, set up Matt's kit and record it. Then everybody takes the stems home and puts the guitars on, the vocals and everything else. We could do that, but that kind of destroys the camaraderie aspect of it, because there's nobody else there. Yeah. And you know, you're on your own and you do it. But
there's no atmosphere.
No.
Atmosphere.
there's a lot less atmosphere than there used to be. It used to be good fun back in the days, recording at Impulse Studios with neat records. And it was kind of like a home from home. Yeah. You know, and we all met up there, the guys from Venom and Raven. You would be in there recording, and they'd pop in to see you and stuff.
More sociable.
A lot more sociable. A lot more sociable. Now it's kind of more technical, and it's about cost, I think. Because back then you'd spend a lot of time in the studio at the rate of £200 a day, which made it a very expensive way of doing things. With the dawn of home computers and home studios, you can actually do it at home for nothing. Yeah. So that kind of makes it takes the sting out of it, I guess.
Yeah. And so how did you go about getting a record deal back then? Because I mean, nowadays it's kind of, you know, some bands will go out and they'll do their own album and then they'll do their own music videos, and that's kind of how some record companies take notes of them. So how did you get the record companies are taking notice back then?
It was kind of hard back then because there was so many stories sort of circulating on what you needed to do to get a record deal. And of course, being young and stupid, you kind of believed it, you know. So you were told, oh, you've got to go to London. You're not going to get a deal unless you move to London. You've got to go to... So I did that.
Yeah.
Went to London, spent pretty much everything I had, sold most of my record collection to keep me... And we still didn't get a record deal. It was a waste of time. No, I mean, back then, really... If you were lucky enough to do a gig somewhere in London where the record company sent A&R people out to watch you, you may get a record deal that way, or the old tried and trusted way, demo, and send it off. And, you know, it was kind of soul-destroying because you just knew that the majority of demos, they didn't even open them, straight in the bin.
Yeah, it didn't take any notice.
You had to kind of do something that made your package stand out. So people would put on photographs of the band or whatever, and stuff like that. And so they'd go, oh, this looks like a band. Then they would actually open it. And then they would look at because it was cassette tapes then as well.
Yeah.
So they would look at the cassette tape, and if you'd actually made a little bit of effort, and instead of just writing on the cassette tape, the name of the band or whatever, if you actually had them printed and stuck on, that... You know, it was about packaging, really.
Entice them in.
And you had to make yours stand out. So the record company would go, oh, we'll have a listen to that. And off they would go.
Yeah.
Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And I'll tell you a story that you're probably not going to believe this, but I swear it is true. I did a lot of work at Neat Records, and basically what they did was they used to give me a load of demo tapes and said, take them away and have a listen to them and see what you think. And I was just the same as anybody else. I'm looking through, I mean, I used to get literally hundreds of demos every week.
Yeah. And
I would sort of look at this, oh, I haven't got time to listen to all of this. I've got to, be out on tour and stuff as well. So you kind of relied on something to attract your eye to it. And I got this envelope, and it was just in a plain brown package, and it was so boring, I thought, this has got to be interesting because they've gone out of the way to make it incredibly boring. Yeah. So I opened it up, and it was Metallica's demo, No Life Till Leather. So I opened the letter, and I looked at it, and it was from Lars. And it basically said, hi, Brian, here's our demo. On the other side of the demo, we've got some a recording of a gig from San Francisco, and we're playing Inferno, Blitzkrieg, and Armageddon, which is 3 Blitzkrieg songs. So I thought, okay, so I had a listen to it. Took it into Neat Records the next day and said, these guys are good, you need to sign this band.
Yeah.
The A&R guy said, they're rubbish. They're not worth anything. I'm not going to swear. I won't tell you exactly what he said, but it was words to the effect of, these guys are nothing. They will go nowhere. They're rubbish. So I had to phone Lars Ulrich and tell him the bad news that Neat Records weren't interested in signing them. And so he said, well, who else can we send it to? I said, you could try Music for Nations. They did, and they got a deal, and the rest's history. But it was just stuff like that. You either had to sort of make your demo stand out ridiculously so, or in their case, they just made it looked just so boring. I'm thinking, this looks so boring. The inside's got to be so much better. Yeah. And it was. I mean, they were a great band, and it was. But that happens. The Beatles were rejected by pretty much every record company in England.
Yeah.
But people in record companies can be wrong.
Yeah.
As in anything. But that really was the only way. You had to send off stuff, and you could bombard record companies if you wanted to. You could send 3 or 4 copies of the demo and try different things. But just sometimes it didn't work. How it worked for Blitzkrieg was we sent out demos to every record company in the country, and some we didn't even get answers from. Neat Records got back to us and said, you're actually from the Northeast, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I am. So they said, right, we'll sign you. So I'm thinking, what? You know.
Yeah.
And they signed us, and we did the single, and so on. But you know, it's kind of, it was hard getting a record deal back then. I think it's not quite so necessary now, because people can white label things. They can do that. You know, they could record their own album and they can put it out there. The only problem is though, the main festivals like Wacken Festival, Sweden Rock, will not put you on unless you're signed to a label. So you still have to have a label. But I think the strength of independent labels now is so much more than the majors. There's only 4 majors really. But they, you know, if you sign to a major record label like EMI or whatever, then you just become one of the many.
Yeah.
And you become like a faceless thing that they're only interested in, are you going to make money for us? And so they kind of shape you. They tell you how you've got to look, how you've got to dress. No, we don't like that picture for the album sleeve. This is your album sleeve. This is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to buy into that. I would rather be with an independent label. They're much better. They're actual fans of the music, and that really helps.
Now, Brian, you've been touring and recording before MTV was even invented. So when MTV came about, how did that affect bands and artists?
Well, MTV, it didn't invent the music video, but it kind of purported that it did.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the music video was kind of invented by the Beatles, because their movies were all, you know, they had music going on, and they actually did do videos to be played on Top of the Pops, which was the music program of the day. With the dawn of the video, which Queen are actually given the credit for, with Bohemian Rhapsody, it opened up a whole new world, because before that you had to rely upon the music press.
Yeah.
And basically, the music press would take your video, take your demo rather, or your album, and they'd review it. And if you got a good review, then people generally took notice of that, and they would go out and buy your record. And it was done in such a way that you had to come up with covers for your album cover, that were eye-catching. Again, it's an extension of the demo thing. So really, you walk into a record store, you're faced with literally thousands of records. So you start flicking through. You need your record to be much more eye-catching than everybody else's, because you're flicking through and you stop and you think, this looks good, and you lift it out. And back then, you used to take the record to the person serving you, and you'd ask to hear the first track, and you'd go into a booth, put a pair of headphones on, and you'd listen to it. So you've got them. You've got their attention with the sleeve, and you had to make sure that the first track of the album was so dynamic it was unbelievable. So you would do that so that when they listen to the first track, you've got them. Then they might buy the record. So you've got all of that going on. You had, you know, if you had a bad review, then that kind of slowed you down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because then you relied upon somebody buying a record and then saying to their mates, this is great, have a listen to this. And then their mates would have a listen, they go, oh, I'll go out and buy that as well. So bad reviews slowed it down, but didn't stop it. Good reviews, you know, people just went out and bought it. And if you could get your album played on the Friday Rock Show with Tommy Vance on BBC One, you were absolutely made, because then people, if Tommy Vance says this is good, it's got to be good, you know. So videos, when they came along, made life just a touch easier. Yeah. But unfortunately, it was out of the price bracket of most bands. Yeah. Record companies wouldn't pay for them; you had to pay for them yourself. So you would go on, you'd get a video done, and then you would send it to MTV to have it rejected every time. Oh, really? You know, really. I mean, we Blitzkrieg did videos, and we sent them off, and it was like, they said, nah, the quality's not good enough. And then you would be watching something on MTV the next night, and the quality of a video was worse than the one that you rejected. You know, so there was something going on there. It was like
a backhanded deal.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I don't know. People got their videos played, but you know, now I think videos have become a necessity rather than just a luxury, which they were back then. So now everybody does videos pretty much, and it's just become another string to the bow, I guess, and it's all part and parcel of the promotion work that goes into the release of an album or a single or whatever it is. So, but it's a necessary evil.
Now let's talk about albums and tours, because I've heard musicians in interviews state that, you know, back in the day you used to tour to support an album, and now you release the album to do a tour. Yeah,
I mean that's true. I mean, you know, back then you made very little from touring at all because bands didn't get paid an awful lot of money, and so to make your money, you had to bring. Again, it was all promotion. Again, it was no videos, so you know it was just another way of bringing the attention to your album. So you would go out and you would do a tour, and you know, as a singer, your job was to sort of plug it all the time. It's like, oh, this is a song from the new album, blah 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 blah. And if you were really on the ball, you would have copies of your album on sale in the foyer. Of the concert hall. So you would do that, and that's the way it was done then. Now it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Now you want to get out and tour because that's what you want to do, because it's a lot of fun. But you need to sell a load of albums to finance the tour, because now the cost of getting out there on tour is astronomical. The price of everything has just gone ridiculous. You've got to hire the halls, you've got to take a road crew, everybody's got to be fed while you're on tour. If you've got a day off, you've still got to live while you know. So the cost of it is ridiculous. But the other thing, of course, is not just record sales, it's merch. You make a lot more money from merch than anything.
Yeah.
And that, you know, when you consider that it costs to buy a T-shirt, for instance, it costs more than to buy the album, which to me is a nonsense. But that's just the way it is. It costs more to do the album
than it does to make a T-shirt.
Exactly, and so the whole thing has kind of been turned up on its head. But music still prevails, I guess, in one form or another. You know, the record, the actual album itself, took a total nosedive, nobody wanted them, and then all of a sudden they're the huge big thing again. You know, 25 quid for an album, so what's that about?
Yeah.
When I bought my first album, it was 50 pence. 50 pence, and it was 20 pence for a single.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, that was a million years ago.
Yeah. And so now, because of CDs, people can buy the CD and then they can upload it to YouTube. And so now what you have is a lot of bands that have full albums on YouTube. Yeah. So how does that affect bands and artists when somebody does that?
It's soul destroying.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you go into a recording studio at the rate of a couple of £300 a day, and you spend all of that money to record something, and then one person goes out and buys it, then uploads it, and then everybody can just download it for free.
Yeah, surely that decreases album sales.
That totally decreases album sales. But I think we're lucky in the rock and metal area, because yes, somebody might well go and download it for free, but you would like to think that once they've heard it, they think, I like that, I'm going to go out and buy the physical product, which in the metal and rock genres, that generally does happen. But back in the day, the similar thing was your mate would buy, you know, your friend would go out and buy an album, say Led Zeppelin's new album, and you'd go, oh, shoot me a copy of it. So they would record it on a cassette, and you would listen to it that way. It was the same as downloading it for free, really. But generally, what happened was once you listened to it, if you liked it, you would just go out and buy the album anyway.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that still is the case, and I think. it's done a lot less now than it was when it first came through, and I think that's a good thing in a lot of ways. People can now buy the records or buy the albums, and I think they prefer to do that because you get your album sleeve or whatever. You can read all of the sleeve notes. You can't do that from a download. So I am, what you've got to remember though is, if too many people do this, bands just simply can't afford to exist anymore. So it's kind of self-destruction in a way, because they go out and they download an album, then somebody else does it. Before you know it, 1 million people have downloaded your album and you don't get a penny from it. And then the next time round you say, well, look, we just can't afford to go in the studio anymore. And that's a sad fact of life.
And so how do you feel about streaming sites? Because surely you don't get as much from a stream as what you do from an album sale.
No, you don't. I mean, stuff like I'm as guilty as the next person for that. With Amazon's Alexa and all that stuff. It's great. You pay your fee, your monthly fee, but you don't get the musicians do get their royalties from that. But the royalty from a play of, say, in Blitzkrieg's case, so a track from the new album. If you went onto Alexa and said, "Oh, play Angels or Demons by Blitzkrieg," you get to hear it, and you've paid your fee, but you would get very little from that. Whereas from a royalty from a record sale, it's a kind of a complicated situation, but whatever a record sells for, the record company collects the money and the band gets half of that, and then that is then split between the members of the band. So you do get a lot more per unit from an actual record sale than you do from a stream. But it's useful. It's useful because, again, if you listen to it, then hopefully that prompts you to go and buy the thing anyway. So, that's what you hope for.
So, being in Satan and Blitzkrieg and touring in both bands, has that ever became a problem for either band that you're so busy?
No, not really. I mean, it can become a huge pain in the backside, because you've got to make sure that you keep in touch with each other, and it sometimes falls down. So you'll have a gig booked for a particular date. You forget to tell the other band, and they book a gig for the same date.
And then you end up double booked.
Then you've got to try and work it out. But generally, that doesn't happen. Generally, we keep in touch with each other about gigs before that happens. So. It's hard work though. This time round, I tried to arrange it so Blitzkrieg and Satan weren't recording albums at the same time, and it worked out exactly the same again. Both at the same time, I'm recording 2 albums at the same time, trying to keep in the mindset of Satan, and then going to record Blitzkrieg, because they're 2 very different bands, and it sometimes becomes very difficult, but not impossible, thankfully.
And so my last question is, how do you feel about programs and TV shows like X Factor? Do you feel that there's a lot of positive stuff comes from that, or do you feel like it's a little bit of negative? Because one thing that I've realized, that a lot of people only vote for someone because they come from their area. So how do you feel about that?
Well, it is. I was going to say it's political, but you kind of think, well, does that mean that they're affiliated to political parties? No, I don't mean that kind of political. I mean, as you say, the political area of, I'll vote for them because they're from Sunderland, or I'll vote for them because they're from Newcastle. I don't think they generally find talent, to be honest. I think some of the most talented people don't even get through. And I generally don't watch those programs. I generally don't watch TV, to be fair. But I stopped watching programs like that because I just felt the whole thing was, I don't know. I mean, you'll see some of these people that they put through, and it's because they're laughing at them. Because they're absolute talentless people.
Because they have a story that they feel sorry for.
And I think the whole thing is wrong. I kind of experienced it myself when I went for the job as Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. And the press that were there at the time were totally convinced that I was going to walk away with the job because they knew who I was. I looked like the part because I had the full beard and everything going on. And the press waited for. I went in, I did my audition, and I came out, and the press went, right, okay, and I didn't get it. What? They couldn't believe it, and it was kind of bizarre. I went in. I'll tell you. See, when you do these things, you sign a contract saying that you will not divulge what happens. I guess now, a few years later, it's kind of probably okay, but it's what happens is they you go in there and you've got like you're looking towards the camera, obviously, and they're watching you and they say, right, do your thing. And you do it, and the producer knew who I was. She knew that I was going to be there on the day, and she said, well, look, I'm sorry to say you haven't got through, but would you mind signing my album for me? And I thought, yeah, fair enough. And so I said, can I just ask why I haven't got through? Because you're professional. That's it. I didn't get through because I was professional. Yeah. And the actual guy that won was from Sunderland, and good luck to him. I didn't particularly like the production, but it wasn't because of him. It was because of the way that they did it. Yeah. But I think generally the people that don't win the X Factor are actually the better musicians. And I think that's generally the way it is, because can you actually think of anybody that actually won the X Factor that is still around a few years later?
You normally get the like third or even second.
Second,
do
third,
quite well.
They do quite well and they put out albums, and that's great. I think it's generally though it's kind of just an extension of the old demo tape thing, really. But done live instead of listening to a tape. Yeah. But I don't like it. I think I don't like reality TV. Full stop. Because you're making superstars out of people that really,
they're famous for being famous.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people, film stars and stuff. They've worked and they've worked hard and earned their status. Musicians, people like Bob Plant. Richie Blackmore, Ian Gillan, they worked hard to get where they are. Yeah. And then you get some faceless wonder come along and just get a record deal just like that. Yeah. But the thing is, are they going to still be around in 2 years? Nah, they're not. Because as soon as they lose popularity, the record company dumps them and moves on to the next one. Yeah, that's just the way it is.
The next big act.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the way it works. And they don't, because of that, they don't want to know about rock music and stuff because they have no control over it. Yeah. What they want is acts that they can say, right, here's a piece of music, there's the lyrics, this is how you sing it, do it.
And this is what you're going to do on stage.
Yes, we'll teach you a dance routine and all this kind of thing. They don't want musicians that write their own music. And
because there's less control.
Because they've got no control over it whatsoever, and that's fair enough if that's the way they want to play it. But the music business has changed drastically over the years. Yeah. It's a totally different beast now to what it used to be. But I mean, I'm not saying that there wasn't talent shows back then. There was things like Opportunity Knocks, which I'm sure you've never heard of, but it was done in a similar way. You would have someone come in and they would do whatever it is that they did, and the audience would vote on who they thought was the best act. So it's not a new idea by any stretch of the imagination, but these people didn't get record deals at the end of it. They just had their 15 minutes of fame, and then that was it, really. So, yeah. I mean, what goes around comes around. These ideas aren't new, but they're still just as boring.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for coming, Brian. Good luck with the tour.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you again on Lix Media.
Absolutely. Helps.
Alan, is that microphone on? Has it got a light on? Has it actually? Oh, thank God for that. I thought if that wasn't picking up, that would have been incredibly hard to sing up. I was like, when you were talking there, I was like, shit, I can't remember if I turned it on. God. Yeah. Okay, unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. And I'm going to start that again. I don't even know where I was going with that.